Hey, how you doing, girl? It's your dad, Miguel Trujillo. Thank you for choosing to spend some time with me today. I really appreciate it. I'm grateful to have you in my life, and I'm also really thankful that we live in a communication age where I am able to sort of transmit my photons through the internet into your eyes and into your mind. We live such privileged lives here in internet world, in the information age, that we're able to have this close connection despite the distance. And I'm really grateful for that every day, and how inspirational it is and how much change it inspires. This sort of ability to transcend time and space. Essentially, we're all time travelers and space travelers, where I can spend time with my daughter anytime I want, in any place that I am, because of technology. And wow, what a fantastic gift that is. It's a gift to the world. And I am so pleased to be able to share that gift with you. I'm noticing, anyway, I'm noticing that a lot of my gestures have to be up here just because of where the camera is. I'm still figuring out camera stuff, right? So, anyway, forgive my ignorance as it relates to filming myself and video blogging. I will get better and better to make your experience a little more pleasurable as you watch me. You know, I was thinking today about your inner life and and my inner life. I was basically valuing both lives. I care about the way I feel about things. I care about what I think about. I care about what's going on in my mind and the thoughts that I think. And I care about your inner life too. I care about the thoughts that you think in your mind. I've spoken for many years about mental health and pitfalls and resources for improvement and development in that area. Your inner life is important to me. And your inner life is as important as my inner life to me. There's a parity there. And I think, at least in my mind, we have that common connection. We value each other's inner life. And I just wanted to share that with you. I think that's important for you to know, that I care about what goes on in your mind and the thoughts that you generate. Now, I recognize the fact that I'm not responsible for those thoughts. But I also recognize that I have potentially the ability to trigger those thoughts. And so I take that responsibility seriously. I'm not responsible for your inner life, but I do care for it. I care about the amount of emotional pain you experience and why you're experiencing it. And I'm interested in reducing that level of emotional pain a few notches, and also helping you be more effective in your life, helping you grow and mature and develop and become the woman that I know you can become. Yeah. And you have so much potential as a young person living today in this technological age, in the age of robots and artificial intelligence and communication technology and ideas that travel instantaneously around the world. There's so much potential. Your life is going to be so different than mine, so changed in comparison to mine, so much better in comparison to mine, that I have difficulty even imagining how much better. I know. I think I talk sometimes at length about how me today in 2018 live like a king would live back in the 1200s or 1300s AD. And I'm basically Julius Caesar, but I'm the Julius Caesar of my own life. I have a feeling that my life is better than even Julius Caesar's life in Rome back in 1100, 1200 AD. And that is possible because of the technology that we have today, and even the cultural technology, the ethical technology. For example, slavery is what I'd call, the abolition of slavery is what I'd call ethical technology. We figured it out. We figured it out that people ought not to be owned, and that doesn't make any sense. And we abolished it. And we figured it out. Back in 1100 AD, people weren't quite sure. They honestly were not quite sure whether that was a problem or not. And now we figured out the problem, we've solved it, and we can move on. And I think everyone's lives are better for that, right? Less conflict, less hardship. Everyone's conscience is a little more free. And so just on that basis alone, I can say that my life is better than Julius Caesar's life, who ruled in Rome. So pretty amazing. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for coming along on this journey with me. And so let's begin with our first part of the series. That is reading the book Peaceful Living by Mary Mackenzie. Let's see what she has to say today. Now, today is the 28th of September, and the quote for the day is, "To listen well is as powerful a means of influence as to talk well." Chinese proverb. Let me get my personal reflection of what this means to me. First of all, listening well is very important to me. I've spoken in the past many times about active listening. I think one of the key causes of emotional pain is the fear that another person doesn't hear you. It's the fear that another person doesn't quite understand what you're going through. And that fear can only be alleviated through being heard, being understood, that there is evidence that through verbal expressions or written expressions that other person understands where you're coming from. So long as that is the case, if other people could understand other people completely, I think there would be a whole lot less conflict and distress and discord in the world. Just the understanding. In fact, one of the most powerful defensive strategies that people who are sort of aggressive employ is pretending not to understand the other person. And that tactic is extremely effective at causing emotional pain in another person. It's what I'd call the lack of empathy. A choice not to imagine what the other person's experience is, and then expressing that choice, sort of making a statement that, I will not empathize or sympathize with your situation. That itself is an affront. It's almost like it's it's sort of a it's sort of an expression of non-acceptance, and it's hurtful. That expression itself is hurtful. It's basically the end of partnership, you know? It's separation. And that is one of the most emotional, painful things that human beings can endure. You know, human beings are social creatures, and we get along through mutual understanding. This sort of conversation between minds. It's almost like what I'd call joint consciousness. It's like it's a common consciousness. That's how we're joined together. It's our ability to communicate and empathize and understand another person's point of view. It's the way we understand other people's worlds. And you know, it's sort of like what I'd call cooperative thinking, right? Cooperative thinking can only take place when two people are willing to understand each other's world. And cooperative thinking stops when one person decides not to do that. One person decides not to understand, not to be compassionate for another. That's the end of that cooperative thinking. And that is also the start of separation. And it's also the start of discord. And so, yeah, that is why, that is really why active listening is so important and why it's so powerful. It's powerful because when you listen actively to another person, you're signaling to them that you are part of their world, that you are willing to think with them on a certain topic or subject matter, that there's a willingness to act in cooperation, a willingness to act in partnership with another person. And I think that is one of the most loving things another person can do. It really is sort of, it is part of acceptance and love. It is what love and acceptance is all about. It's a willingness to share in another person's world, to share their perspective, at least for a moment, to share a common understanding, to share common interests, you know, to share common values. It's at least a moment where, you know, people recognize that they are one. And you really can't be one with another or cooperate with another unless you partner with them through what I'd call like a joint consciousness. That is sort of listening to another person and their experience and what it means to them. And listening in silence, listening with recognition, listening with understanding. Yeah. So, you know, that's important. I think this Chinese proverb is correct. To listen well is so powerful a means of influence as to talk well. Is as powerful a means of influence as to talk well. Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, it might even, it's certainly as important. I was thinking, could it be more important? You know, it could possibly be more important. You know, I know that there are people in relationships who are primarily the listeners in a relationship. And I have a feeling they can exert quite a bit of influence as listeners. Yeah. So anyway, so let's see what Mary McKenzie has to say about the quote herself and see what her commentary is. And the subtitle for her passage is The Power of Being Heard. I often hear people say this in my classes. Yeah, but don't you think that if I say anything at all, it will cause the situation to escalate? This question came up in a recent class. The person who asked it was upset with his spouse about something, so I reflected what I thought his feelings and needs were. Instantly, he started to cry because he felt so touched that someone understood what he was trying to say. He had been having the same argument with his wife for years, but in that minute of empathy, he was heard for the first time. To hear another's feelings and needs is one of the most powerful methods to diffuse anger and create space for resolution that I have ever encountered. It may seem awkward at first because we are not used to talking with people in this way. It is okay to feel awkward. Do it anyway. Soon it will feel as natural as breathing. And the thought for the day is, be aware of opportunities to empathize with someone today. Mhm. Yeah. She says, to hear another's feelings and needs is one of the most powerful methods to diffuse anger and create space for resolution that I have ever encountered. Yeah. I agree. A lot of ground can be made just through mutual understanding. Even if there's no agreement, even if there's no resolution, a lot of ground can be covered in negotiations if there's just understanding. In fact, having understanding as the basis for any negotiation, I would say, is probably the most important way to create resolution in any conflict. You know, it's kind of interesting how we're talking about conflict, and I've nearly finished a book recently. I wanted to share it with you. This book is titled Mediating Dangerously: The Frontiers of Conflict Resolution. And I've basically just finished this book. I'm on the last chapter, and I'll finish this book today. The book is by Kenneth Cloak, and I've actually been really enjoying it. Kenneth talks a little bit about, the importance of conflict mediation. He thinks of conflict mediation as a spiritual path, which is a fascinating idea to me. And he also talks of conflict as being supportive of sort of getting deeper, finding what the needs and feelings of people are, and a deeper understanding of people and what they want. And he talks about how conflict can be the heat that generates light. And that's an attitude about conflict, I think, that I want to develop, because really the way I respond to conflict myself is avoidance. I wish I know that's an overstatement. I think I do like to collaborate quite a bit, and collaboration comes natural to me. And I am challenged by conflict, and I tend to withdraw or draw away during conflict. And at least, I don't know, that also might be an exaggeration. I am also quite curious about why conflict happens and how to alleviate conflict. And so anyway, I'm reading this book to sort of be better at managing conflict in my own life. Not only conflict between me and other people, but even conflict in my own mind. There are conflicting stances and attitudes, and the way I speak to it in my own mind and think it through is quite important. And I just want to sort of find better ways of managing disagreement in my own mind and when I'm communicating with other people. And so I'm happy to read that book. In fact, reading that book has kind of inspired me to read other books about conflict resolution. You probably know that I have a strong interest in communication and developing communication skills and just becoming a better speaker and a better listener and a more empathic speaker. And I basically read a lot of books about self-development as it relates to communication. And I have not necessarily been reading a lot of books about negotiation and conflict resolution. Now, I've read a number of books about that subject. I think Stephen Uri, The Power of Yes, or something like that. I've read a few of those books, and in a context that relates to management. And anyway, I'm excited about it. I think it'll be very helpful in helping me develop healthier habits as it relates to mediating conflict in my own life. So, today I think I'm probably going to skip my life story a little bit. I could talk about it somewhat, but I think I'm going to take a little break about speaking about that subject. Maybe I'll talk about it tomorrow. So today I want to get back to reading My Big Fat Zombie Goldfish. All right. Okay. So the book left off in chapter 7 when Tom and Pradeep are basically tied up by Mark, Tom's brother, because Mark is looking for his goldfish. The goldfish that turned into a zombie after he was resuscitated back to life by a 9-volt battery, and being placed in a fishbowl full of polluted water. Okay, so the zombie now has special powers to hypnotize people. In fact, the fish hypnotized Pradeep's sister. Anyway, and now Mark is thinking that Mark wants to hypnotize the entire school because he's an evil scientist. And maybe even hypnotize the entire world with his zombie fish. So Mark is feeling power hungry, but Mark still hasn't found the fish. So anyway, let's return to the story now with Pradeep and Tom bound by Mark, and Mark's trying to find the fish. Chapter 8 is called The Great Escape. He hung up the phone and went to put it in his pocket. As he did, Frankie twisted and shook free from Mark's grasp. The bag landed on the carpet and Frankie started to roll for the floor. Yes, Frankie was escaping. Mark walked over to Pradeep and me and tapped the goldfish bowl above our heads. Fish, he called. Say goodbye to the morons. Frankie paused and looked back at us. Go, Frankie, I shouted. Get away now. So Frankie is the name of the fish, just so you know. Frankie is essentially Frankenstein's monster. It's a reference to Frankenstein's monster, who is the zombie fish. I felt Pradeep's body go all tense as he prepared for the gung to hit us, but the glow in Frankie's eyes faded as he looked at me. I shook my head and mouthed the words, Frankie, go! But Frankie stopped thrashing in his bag and stayed still. Good choice, fish. Mark walked over and scooped up the bag. Remember, if you won't help me, then it's flush time for you. No, I shouted. No, Pradeep moaned. Fishy, Sammy squealed and held out her hands. Now, let's get ready to hypnotize Mom when she gets back, Mark said, as he strode out of the room, clenching Frankie's bag tight in his fist. Mark slammed the door. We looked up to see the bowl balanced above our heads, rocking back and forth. It was going to fall. I felt Pradeep trying to reach up and grab the knot in the belt around us, but his wrists were tied too tight. The bowl wobbled more with every move we made. Green, slimy water dripped on the back of my neck. Pradeep stretched his fingers as far as he could, but it wasn't enough. I squashed closer to him to try to give the belt some slack so he could reach. Murdy moot meat, he said, as his fingers pulled on the knot behind his back. Mais! He loosened the knot, and I felt the belt drop away. Roll, I shouted, as we both rolled in opposite directions. Just as the goldfish bowl slammed onto the carpet between us, spilling toxic water across the floor. I ran over to Pradeep and pulled the tape off his mouth, leaving sticky pink stripes across his face. Thanks, Pradeep. How did you do that? I asked as I pulled the last loop of belt off my wrists. We did knots at Cubs last week. That was a quarterman's noose. Not too tricky to undo if you know how, he answered. Then he went to help Sammy out of the trash can. She hugged Pradeep around the neck as I eased Chewbacca off her bottom. Now to get Frankie, I said. That's when we heard it. A sound that I never found terrifying until that day. We heard a fatal flush. Okay. So, Mark apparently, maybe, flushing the zombie goldfish down the toilet. I kind of doubt it because Mark wants to hypnotize his mom, the school, and the whole world to take control of their minds with the zombie goldfish. So I don't think Mark's going to flush the fish down the toilet. That is Frankie, not going to flush Frankie. All right. Cool, man. So I'm curious, how have you been enjoying the book, My Big Fat Zombie Goldfish? We're already on chapter 8. That means it's been 8 days of reading this book. Do you have any thoughts about that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Well, we'll see. I don't know how many chapters are in the book. Let me think. Let's see. Does it even say? It doesn't even have a table of contents. A book without a table of contents. I guess that makes sense for fiction books. I don't read a lot of fiction books, so I guess only nonfiction books have big table of contents in them. Fiction don't happen to have that. Well, anyway. So, I think what Mark and Tom need is some kind of mediator to sit down with them so that they can get to the bottom of some of their conflict. Brothers, they're always fighting. That reminds me of my youth. I did a lot of fighting with my brothers and sister when I was growing up. That was, it's just what kids do. We push each other. We would push each other around and wrestle on the ground and throw stuff at each other. It was pretty primitive. It was a lot of fun, and sometimes people got hurt. Absolutely. Yeah, I got hurt plenty of times. And so, anyway, that's what it was like. It was basically a big wrestling match. 18 years of wrestling. Yeah. So, let's see. What's going on in my life today? Well, today I'm going to be helping a friend transport her motorcycle from Santa Barbara to Lompoc. And so that'll probably take some part of the morning. I might be back in Lompoc by early afternoon. And we'll see how that goes. I also need to study for my machining class. I've got a midterm exam next Monday. I can't believe midterms are already here. There's so much material for me to understand and comprehend and study. I don't know when I'm going to find the time. Hopefully I can find the time a couple times today to go over my study material for the midterm exam. I'll look forward to that, and I hopefully over the next 4 days or so, I will review that midterm material maybe 2 or 3 times a day, maybe even 4 times a day. I'm really into repetition as a way to study. For me, studying is all about practice taking the test. And, that's how I like to study. So, Em, earlier in the day, I mean, like, was it yesterday? It was the day before yesterday. I sent you a text message that showed a picture of me at the Positivity Parade, which is where a group of friends and I got together in Pismo Beach, and we marched with signs up and down the streets, um, you know, and down to the pier with signs, uh, you know, asking people to consider kindness as a way to live their lives and happiness. And it was basically a positivity parade. We were encouraging people to, you know, think about their life uh, in more joyful terms. And I had a really nice time. I was there with maybe five other people, and we all came together. I've done the positivity parade activity before. I did it about a year ago, and I hope to do it every year because I really do get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I love sort of reacting or noticing the unscripted reactions of people who are passing in the street, and I love to sort of experience their feedback as we're just sort of conveying positive vibes out to the community, helping them to see the more joyful aspects of life. And I was really encouraged about about just having friends and having people around me who were so sort of committed to the same type of attitude, right? So committed to not only their own happiness, but other people's happiness. Not only committed to their own joy, but other people's joy. And it was really amazing how much energy that my friends brought to this activity. We were we were out there raising our signs and sort of handing out inspirational quotes, inspirational thoughts, good thoughts to people. And man, I sure did enjoy it. I just like, for me, not only was I happy supporting other people who are walking by, but I felt supported too. I felt supported by my friends and acquaintances that walked with me on the at the positivity parade. As much as I was supported by people who were encouraged me, people who are walking up and down the sidewalks and driving along the street, encouraging us by giving us smiles and glances and even honking their horns. Passing cars would honk their horns in agreement and approval of what we were doing. And so I'm really pleased by that whole activity. I really enjoyed myself. And I really spent almost the entire 2 hours that we were out there, I spent it smiling and laughing. And I mean, it was completely amusing. It's not something I do every day. Not that I couldn't do it every day. I certainly could. But I just, for some reason, I don't know, I just like having that support of other people the most. It makes me want to know my friends more. I'm kind of interested. They all appear to be as interested in promoting happiness producing thinking as I am. And that's intriguing how we're all of us moved by the same thing. This attitude of promoting happiness to the to the larger masses. It's something I've been doing for a long time. I know I used to have a blog called thinkhappythoughts.com. I own this website, which, I purchased this website. I forget what method I used it for, but I had a blog. At first, it was a WordPress blog. I don't know if you know anything about WordPress, but WordPress is a blogging method. It's software, it's blogging software, and you can take ownership of it. And I think it's free. You can take ownership of it in the sense that you get a lot of control over how the blog is presented through its design. And yeah, I had a WordPress blog and my own domain, thinkhappythoughts.com. Now, I have let that domain expire since then, and a lot of that content I have saved on my hard drive on my computer. And basically what I did is for a couple years, it was a good 3 to 5 years, I was a happiness blogger. And so what that means is that I would write articles nearly every day or a couple times a week relating to the subject of happiness. And I would just talk about different aspects of happiness as it relates to, my life and everyone's life. And, I would describe tips and tricks to help people live a little bit happier. And, I'm really proud of that work that I did. And I kind of wish that there was a way that I could take my work and publish it again. I might very well do that. I've always had this idea that I could create a podcast, and then the podcast would just be me reading those articles. I think it could be a good source of content if I ever chose to create a podcast. And one thing I think that would be nice is, well, I would like to put that content online and do it in a free way. Honestly, I just don't know how to do it. YouTube is a great resource for putting videos online for free. I guess I could use Facebook. Maybe I could post a lot of my articles on Facebook, those old blog articles. I'm not sure. That doesn't seem like quite the venue to put blog posts about happiness. I'm going to have to figure out, I really do want to figure out a way to take that content. I worked really hard on that content, and pretty much all of it still remains relevant to people who are inspired by happiness and joy, and who are interested in maximizing that in their lives. It's still very relevant content. In fact, it could even be relevant to me. I probably need to study it again. And so how do I resurrect my blog? I'm not sure. So anyway, I really enjoyed the Positivity Parade. I especially liked how there were two people who were just pedestrians, passers-by, who decided to join in to our Positivity Parade. They just stepped right in. They said, "Hey, can we hold a sign?" And lo and behold, a few moments later, we gave them signs, and they were holding signs just like us. And they were having a lot of fun. I mean, I could tell just by looking at them that they were having a blast. It's fun. It's fun. There is a lot of enjoyment in reminding people about the good things in life, about things that bring them enjoyment, right? It's about sort of encouraging others to see life in a more positive light. It's really easy to think of light in dim terms. It's really easy to hang out in a low mood because, we're basically conditioned by our environment. And a lot of media has a lot of negative messages. There's a lot of negative messaging out there, a lot of negative signaling. There's a lot of warnings, there's a lot of fears, and it's really easy to get wrapped up in those messages because, first of all, they're so ubiquitous. The media, it's wonderful to live in this technological age. And though when we're living in such a technological age, we're basically bombarded by negative imaging, negative messaging, and positive messaging, you know. But I think the negative messaging is probably a lot more amplified. You know, it's really about the human brain and what human brains pay attention to. You know, human brains are sensitive to risk, and they want safety, and in order to maximize safety and reduce risk, everyone's paying attention to these negative messages because, you know, we want to act in ways that reduce risk, right? You know, that's what human beings do. You know, that's really the purpose for all of our story making and all of our socializing. Human beings reach out to one another for help and support to help them lead lives that have the greatest benefit for the least risk. You know, it's that cost benefit analysis. It's risk return analysis that our brains are constantly churning out. Risk return, risk return, risk return. You know, I talk to people who are interested in economics and say the housing industry or buying and selling cars or flipping stuff on Craigslist, and all of this whole mentality is the result of a risk benefit analysis that human being minds continually perform. I mean, I'm continually doing risk benefit analysis. Continually. And it relates to how I spend my time, it relates to how I spend money, it relates to my relationships. It's all about risk benefit. How can I meet my needs while spending as few resources as possible? You know, it's just what human beings do. It's how we survived for millennia. You know, human beings, we've been around for 200,000 years, right? Homo sapiens. And, you know, the primary reason that we are so good and have really basically surpassed all other life on the planet in terms of our intellectual prowess and skill is that we continually play this game of risk-benefit analysis. It's continually going on in our minds. You know, there's a simulating machine where we've got images of exchanges, right? We're exchanging time for money. We're exchanging money for food. There's always these exchanges going on, and they're continual. And, you know, it's because human beings, moment to moment, are making decisions on which exchanges to make that benefit our long-term interests. You know, it is a continual calculation, you know, and it's done well for us humans. We're doing pretty well at it. We've basically figured out life to some extent, and we're doing pretty well on this planet. You know, just a few hundred years ago, people used to live outdoors most of the time, you know, and even at just 1,000 years ago, people were living in caves. I'm serious. They lived in caves. You know, a house is nothing more than a cave, right? But it hasn't been very long, you know, and really subsistence farming still exists in the world. And you know, we're really just stepping up out of the muck of the past right now. And thankfully, a good portion of the world is stepping out of poverty. And, you know, we're doing a pretty good job. And really, we're doing a good job because of this risk-benefit analysis that human beings continually do. Now, why this hasn't happened earlier, I don't know. I mean, Homo sapiens, since our beginning 200,000 years ago, could have made the leaps and bounds a couple hundred years ago, 100,000 years ago, and I'm not sure why we didn't do it, but we're doing it now. We're surviving and we're figuring life out. And anyway, I just want to say how proud I am to be alongside you in partnership in our lives, you, Emily, and me, and how we're surviving and thriving in the world. And also at the same time, joining each other, with a more intimate connection and improved conversation. And so I'm really happy about what the trends are doing and how they're looking. And I can't wait to get to know you better and to learn more about you and your life so that I can do a better job supporting you and your inner life. Anyway, I'm going to wrap things up, and I hope you have a wonderful day today. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I'll catch ya tomorrow. I love you, girl. Bye-bye.